A big deal, a small deal, no matter what deal you're ever in, even though you may win in the final analysis, sometimes a door gets closed in your face. How do you get those doors open? What makes you go on?
Well, you do get many doors closed. There's no question about that, Rona. That's something that's happened in many cases. And I guess you just have to keep going. I guess you really just have to keep pushing and just get going. And the funny thing is, once you open the first door, it becomes a lot easier to open the second door. For instance, today, it's much easier for me to have things happen than it would have been 5 years ago before any of these conceptions or conceptual ideas really came into fruition. Today is much easier for me to make a phone call and try and have something happen than it was 5 years ago.
Can you remember your very first deal?
Well, I've always been making deals, even when I was very young.
Very young. How old were you when you set out without any help from anyone to make your very first deal?
That I couldn't say, but I can tell you that it's an instinct that some people have where they enjoy doing certain things. And I've always enjoyed being somewhat creative and working out various deal concepts. But I really couldn't tell you what the first was, Rona.
Were you 12 or 13 years old when you began thinking about concepts? Were you younger than that? Did it start when you were in your teens and your early 20s? When do you think it really all began for you?
Well, I guess probably sometime during high school and during college and during whatever. I think you probably just start forming, the brain cells start forming in that direction. But I really don't know when exactly. I wish I could answer that question a little bit better.
There was an article recently that headlined, "Like Father, Like Son." Are you like your dad?
Well, I hope so. I have a very wonderful father, and I would hope I'd be somewhat like my father.
What's he like?
Strong, dynamic gentleman.
Is he loving, kind, giving?
Absolutely, absolutely, totally.
Could you go to him anytime you had a problem?
Oh,
Was he that kind of a father?
Absolutely, I could, yes.
There's always been this sort of thing, this theory about people who are born into wealth, that the parents shuttle them off to private schools, that you have nannies and governesses, that your parents are really never around when you need them, and a lot of children of the well-to-do have never really been very happy. Some have grown up, of course. There's always the exception to the rule.
That's right.
Were you shunted off to private schools, or did you go to public schools, or what was that
like?
Well,
I was sent to private schools, but probably never shunted off. I went to the private schools, and I went through the whole scenario. But I've always had parents that were very supportive. In fact, very supportive over the last 5 and 6 and 7 years, because I needed support over the last 5 or 6 years. I was being criticized very badly for concepts and ideas that probably at the time would not have been viable, and it turned out that they turned out to be very viable. So I needed the support of a family, of a good family and a strong family, and a family that backed my thinking. And they did, and and now I think they can sit back and say, well, we made the right decision. But I've always had a very supportive family.
Are you hurt by criticism?
No, not really. I've been used to criticism because I've taken a lot of criticism over the last number of years.
I don't think anybody gets used to criticism, though, Donald. I think you can develop sort of what I call a right guard shield around you, but I think the first time people start attacking you, if you've never been attacked before, it's a feeling and an emotion and an action that is not that you're not accustomed to. How do you handle it, or how did you handle it the first time?
First of all, I think you are right. I think you probably never really get used to it in the total sense. And maybe all I'm doing when you say, do you mind criticism? And I say, no, I really don't. Maybe I'm just creating my own little psychological wedge also for maybe that kind of a question. But you just have to go with it. I mean, you're always going to be criticized no matter what you do, and you have to realize it, and you really have to develop a little bit of a tough skin. And if you don't, you really cannot survive, I suspect, doing anything of any great importance.
Do you think you have to have instinct in order to be successful?
I think you have to have some, to a large extent, I think you do have to have at least a winning instinct. And the people that seem to emerge all the time, it doesn't mean they're the best people, and it doesn't mean they're the happiest people. And in fact, in many cases, and in most cases, they're probably not. But the people that seem to emerge are the people that are competitive and driven and with a certain instinct to win.
You use the word competitive and driven. I'd like to know, what drives you?
Enjoyment. Pure and simple enjoyment, Rona.